You done playing?
Never.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sean and Sax Show. What?
It's fine.
I am here to officially announce that this will be our last show. This will be our last show.
Yeah, right.
With the gosh damn table. The table's gone and done. Chairs have been purchased. Have they been delivered yet?
Wednesday.
Okay. What's today?
Wednesday. So yeah.
This will be the last podcast that we do with this stupid table that I have not liked at all. And I'm excited to actually have chairs again so I can sit and be comfortable. See, friends, this is how it works in a marriage.
These aren't chairs by any means.
Huh? No, yeah, these are chairs, but this is a table. And we're going back. We're going back to our roots. We're going back to roots. Anyways, we're excited. I'm excited.
We are.
It's the simple things.
I would like
life.
to also say this is our 60th show.
Is it really?
60.
That's crazy.
And I was looking at Spreaker last night when I could not sleep, and we are nearing
2 million?
Uh-huh.
That's just downloads. That's not even counting YouTube and views and all the other stuff.
That's just Spreaker. Those are just listening podcasts.
So I think we've got close to like 2.3 or 2.4 million.
Mm-hmm. And we moved over the show to the new YouTube, and that's doing great.
It's great.
People have asked why we did that, and let's just chop it up to we have technical difficulties.
Yeah.
So we are going to have a 1.0 and a 2.0 Sean and Sax Show, just like our life.
The irony and the funny thing is we had someone producing the show, and somehow no one on planet Earth, us included, could find the password or know the password to YouTube to upload the show to YouTube. So our channel on YouTube that has all of our, first 50-something shows, we have no clue how to access it. We have no clue how to change it. We have no clue how to delete it. We have no clue to get into it. We have tried to hit the reset who knows how many times.
Our old producer does
wild.
Still have access. But he has guest access, but he still has access, but he's it.
Yeah, well,
So-
we're not. We can't make any changes. So we started a new one.
Why we have a new one.
These are the funny things of life. You know what I mean? These are the things that everybody seems to think. Well, a lot of people think that you have everything figured out. We don't. we had a great day yesterday. And this is kind of in context of not having things figured out. We drove up to the ranch, which is, by the way, buried. There's literally no fence line. There's 4.5 feet of snow on the ranch. It's pretty freaking wild. But it was a great day because we had it was a little bit longer of a drive. Normally it takes us a little bit under 2 hours and took probably close to 3 hours. Well, not about that, 2.5. There was some snow. But we had a great conversation on the way up and a great conversation on the way back.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked for like 6 hours. We didn't fight. We didn't argue.
No, we didn't.
At all, really.
We don't. It's not like we always argue. That's kind of sounds silly. Shouldn't be surprising. to us.
No, but typically there's always something that you say that's pretty fucking weird. Or
We have great debates.
yeah. There's
No fighting.
yeah.
They're
No, but
great.
we had a bunch of great conversations, and there's some things that came up that we wanted to talk about today on the podcast, with regards to with how we were dating and how we really came to be, because I've done a couple of posts recently, and Sax and I have chosen this outlet. We've chosen this portal, this vehicle of podcasting, because it's something that challenges us, number one, but number two, it causes us to speak about things, and neither of us really have a filter, and so it's kind of like once we turn this on. So there's some shows where we're not on it. We're just not wanting to talk. And there's other shows like we should just fucking push record in the truck because the 3 hours would be the podcast, right? But, we started talking about some of the aspects and dynamics of our courting and our relationship, because there are a lot of interesting things that people think. And when we say this in context, because this is the feedback that we get from a lot of people. I share a lot about our relationship. I share a lot about our struggles. I share a lot about our wins publicly. And, there seems to be this idea, and this is one angle that I wanted to take, babe, and then I know that you want to talk about something else. But there's a lot of people that somehow think that because we've been married for 2 years, that we have to, who are we to talk about relationships? Who are we to give counsel? Who are we to talk about these things? And it's like, I get a lot of comments, and again, I know that they're trolls, but this is a really interesting thought process.
Small percentage, however.
It's a small percentage, but this is a mindset that a lot of people share. Now, then this is not just with Sax and Sean, but I want you guys to think about this. Like, somehow, some way, there's been this idea floated that in order to talk about relationships, you have to have this 29-year happy married,
no speed bumps, A+ grade only,
and that doesn't fucking exist, right? No, but I want you to think about this, guys. Like, there is no business on planet Earth that hasn't had problems and hasn't had challenges. In fact, I'd have you consider for a second, and I challenge you to go ask really wealthy people who have built big businesses, has it been smooth sailing? And I guarantee you, without question, 10 out of 10 people say, fuck no, right? How's your body, right? You go ask some ripped guy, hey, was it easy building a six-pack and having giant delts and a great physique? Fuck no. I've had problems and issues and injuries and the whole thing. But I share this simply because I know people that have been married for 20 years that hate their fucking marriage. I know people that have longevity in marriage that hate their fucking marriage. I know people that have been married for 25 years that are getting divorced. So understand that what Sax and I are talking about, what we're sharing, is what we're doing, what we're experiencing, what we're living, what we're loving, what we don't like, the things that work for us, the things that don't work for us. And so it's like,
and we're not trying to sell you perfection. We're not trying to sell anything. It's,
if anything, we're selling you the opposite, which is like, this is real shit. We were joking about it. Like, we were joking about how we talk about sex, and we talk about butt plugs, and we joke about this, and we joke about that, and we talk about our antics and things like that. And I think this is really important because one of the things that you and I committed to, in our relationship, which has caused a lot of peace and also a lot of war, is this vulnerability and this transparency, right? And I find that so many people are so critical of people that are living transparent lives, living transparent realities.
Right.
When the truth of the matter is, the only way to truly, in my opinion, go any deeper in life is to get more naked.
Yeah.
It's to become more transparent. And it's just this interesting dichotomy of thought where, when I share something about Saxony and there's always those kind of snickers from the side. And again, I know that it's a small percentage, but I truly believe that small percentage represents a bigger percentage of people that aren't willing to say anything, that aren't willing to even chime in, right? And there's this reality for us that makes us who we are right now. It makes our dynamic good. It makes it powerful for us, this exposure for us. And so I wanted to share that simply because I challenge all of you listening to understand that real true growth requires you to get naked. It requires you to become vulnerable. If you want more money, you're going to have to become more vulnerable in business. If you want a better physique, if you want a stronger body, if you want a healthier body, you're going to have to get more naked and more vulnerable, more transparent, and seek out people that can help you. If you want a better fucking marriage, a better connection, a better anything, this is what it requires. And so those people who say, well, who am I to talk about health and wellness and six-pack? Well, I don't know, but I got one, so maybe I can talk about how I fucking got there. Yeah. Right? Who am I to talk about relationships? I'm a guy who's battled every single demon, every single fucking thing you could imagine, all of the traumas and the whole thing, and yet here we are. So that's what I talk about. That's what I can share about. And I wish more. I hate doing the whole hope and wishing and stuff. I just encourage people to really understand that Sax and I are trying to figure this shit out as much as anybody else, and we share what we know. We share what we're experiencing. We share what works. We share what doesn't work for us. Right. And I truly believe that's what has driven us to become deeper, more connected. That's what's helped push this show to millions of downloads. That's what's helped us build a brand, build notoriety around who we are and what we do. And at the end of the day, it's kind of the old Bible verse: those with eyes to see will see, and ears to hear will hear. But I just it's an interesting time, especially we just got back from this creators conference thing this morning. It's just an interesting time where so few people are comfortable sharing anything because they feel like they have to have all of this experience and wisdom and whatever. And your life has brought you to where you are. I mean, that is experience and wisdom, you know?
I love, actually, one of the presenters, she said something that we just said yesterday. I had said that it's like people are starving for authenticity.
Yep.
And people, I'm just talking about our society, like things have been trending to be so photoshopped and so perfect and so flawless that it's almost like admitting that you have flaws or you have problems or whatever, however you want to label it, your imperfections of your life. It almost looks like you're broken or there's something wrong. And so that's been going on for so long that now it's almost like the pendulum swung to the other side where people want to see your messy house. They want to hear about, whatever platform they're listening or watching in on. Like, people are attracted to real. And like with us, it's like, we love to just be real because we would hope that light then encourages you to be real. Right. Because at the end of the day, we are all real. Right. Let AI be perfect in their. Oh, jeez. We had a little AI conversation this morning, but truly, it's like, that's where we need to get back to and remember that yes, like. All of that is great and dandy, but real is what connects us as people. Real is what strengthens our families and our communities, is that like we don't have to be perfect to have a good thing going. Sure. And I don't know, that's my takeaway on that one is authenticity is crazy important right now. One of the things that I really wanted to talk about today that got brought up yesterday was we got on the topic of how we dated. And I think we kind of looked at things a little bit different. Like, we almost discovered what it is we actually did in our dating that then we're like, oh, well, that's what that meant, And so I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. I'm getting ahead of myself. Dear. So one of the things that came up is we were talking about other relationship dynamics that Sean and I have been in, where we basically got everything we wanted, if that makes sense. So if we pushed, we got a yes, and we pushed and we got a yes. And pushing is not a negative, meaning like if we wanted something or if we demanded something or we expected something, the answer was always yes, right? And so when you talk about creating a strong relationship, marriage, part of that is the ability to sharpen your sword upon your partner. Meaning, so if I am a yes man and all I ever do is say yes to you, how strong is that relationship? Because it's just going to keep pushing into yes, right? And not that I'm a big supporter of no or being
it's not being defiant to be defiant or resistant to be resistant. It's truly being a counterbalance. It's truly being like you talk. That was a great example that you gave. You said yesterday about like, how do you sharpen the sword if you're not rubbing up against something? You can't sharpen the sword. Yeah, and that's where it's like the co-creation of a relationship, where if two people are both equally pressing into each other, they have a very strong. They can hold that pillar up very strong, right? But if one person is pushing the pillar and the other person's not, it will fall over. It will be lopsided. And so, to me, it's like one of the things that I love about our relationship is that we both hold each other to that resistance of no. Like, there's a lot of no involved because you expect the best from me, from life, from whatever it may be, and vice versa. And so it's like the no's or maybe pushback comes in when, things, for instance, right? We were going to go on a date. This is a very, very, very small, easy one to look at. We were going to go on a double date this week with friends of ours. Well, Tuesday night, Sean was like, hey, what do we have going on Tuesday night? And I said, well, we have kids. And I could have easily said, oh, well, we'll just leave them home with pizza or whatnot. But we don't have full custody of our kids because we share them. So the time we have with them is very, very precious and valuable. So instead of just saying yes, I said, hey, how about we do Wednesday? And both days worked perfectly fine. But we had talked about, and going back to the past relationships, how other people we've been in a relationship with would have just said yes, and they would have had the kid at a babysitter or whatever. There would have been no staying the course of keeping things structured, right? Or boundaries.
Keeping things and this is where the word boundary came in, which I'm surprised that Sean and I are proud of boundaries because we don't necessarily love that word, but that's what it was keeping this. It shows that we don't need to interrupt our lives not interrupt our lives, but the predictability, what we already have put our word to, right? And so it's a little thing of just like, I just said, hey, no, Tuesday doesn't work, Wednesday. Right. Now this could be on a much bigger scale of no, but that just shows those are boundaries. And in part of that, in doing that, we have kept a very strong relationship.
Right. Well, this started, give you guys some examples, because this might sound really easy. Oh, well, shit, you just changed the days of whatever. That's not a huge deal. But the idea of boundaries and the ideas around it is something that I never really had. You know what I mean? And we've talked about this in prior relationships. I mean, you stayed in an abusive relationship. I stayed in an abusive relationship. Like, I had no boundaries. And it's weird for people to hear. It's still weird to even talk about, like, that I was in a relationship where a woman got physical with me and continued to get physical with me, even after I said, if you do that again, I'm done. Yeah. And it would happen again, and I wasn't done because I had no boundaries, right? Now, you can break that down psychologically and and self-care and your own respect and all this other shit. But the real interesting thing when Sax and I were first dating is how, you know, I'd be like, hey, you know, let's go out, let's do this. And you're like, no, I can't. Or I can this day instead of like I can't. Like, I can this day, but not this day. And I was used to just essentially, for lack of better words, getting whatever the fuck I wanted, right? And it was an interesting dynamic because at first it was hard. And I think any of you that have been married for any period of time, this is probably one of the more difficult things that I think people will do, is understand the true nature of boundaries and what that really means as individuals then coming together collectively, right? Because when Sax and I were dating, and if you're single and listening to this, this is fucking gold, right?
Especially the ladies.
Yeah, but if you're listening to this and you're married, understand how powerful this could be as you and your partner start to truly learn this. I'd get almost butt sore. Like, I was upset because she's like, well, no, I'm like, well, hey, let's go out. And you're like, well, I can on these days. And I'm like, yeah, but I want to go now. And you're like, no, I'm not going now.
I have prior obligations that I've already committed to.
And I would get upset because I wanted what I wanted now. It's who I am. It's what I am. It's how I operate. And initially, it was a really frustrating thing for me. But as time went on, I started to gain a lot of respect for that, right? And I realized that you weren't just blowing me off. You were initially, but as we started to actually hang out and get dating more, I realized that you had your own stuff. You had your own things, and it might be around kids. It might be that you had prior arrangements or agreements with girlfriends or this or that or the other, or you were going to the gym or you were doing whatever. And as time went on, I went from resenting that to actually appreciating that. And here we are now.
I was going to say, boundaries truly are, they just teach people how to treat you.
But here's where this is a really sticky situation. This is a really sticky topic.
Sure.
Because I know what I heard when I heard boundaries before. Fuck you. This is my hard no.
Yeah.
This is my hard fucking no.
Not walls.
When you hear boundary, you're thinking, don't touch it, cross it, or fuck you, we're going to burn this bitch to the ground, right? Like, you think boundaries, and it's a very powerful word. It's a very powerful saying. Like, when you say, this is my boundary, it's very intense, right? And as someone who speaks intensely and whatever else, I have empathy for that, because I'm envisioning, and I know that there's a lot of people listening to this right now who struggle with this. Women who struggle having boundaries with their husband. Husbands having struggles with boundaries with their women, right? So some examples of this that really are powerful for us is, like, you and I are both very much, we're very much engaged in our own self-work, right? And you know how important it is for you to work out and for me to work out and for you to take time for you and me to take time for me and things along those lines. And you know, there will be times when you're like, hey, I need you to do this. Or, for instance, like, one of the things, like, when I write, right? And this is a good example of this.
That's a great example.
When I'm using my phone, I get in these zones where I just start writing, where God's like, write.
It's almost like a download.
It's a really interesting thing, and it's something that's been happening to me for the last 4 or 5 years, where all of a sudden, like, the universe is like, pick up your phone and write, and I'll just open up my notes and I just go. And I'm just writing. And I'm so fixed on what I'm doing, and I'm so in that moment that, like, this happened literally the other day. You know, when Sax and I first got together, it was kind of like, hey, wait a second, I'm writing. And there was a little bit of friction there, right? And that's an important space for me to be in, because I'm very creative and it's very powerful. And to me, it's very divine in those moments. And so Sax and I had to learn this understanding of boundaries. Like, when I say I'm writing or I'm in this space, you wait. And unless the house is on fire or I'm about to get hit by a fucking bus, you know, and this agreement has been made. And it was something that I used to really it would really frustrate me, because what I would do, and guys hear this because this is what we do, is I'd be in the middle of this and I would be like ignoring you, or I'd be whatever, and then I would blow up. I'm like, can't you see I'm fucking doing something, or whatever. But when you establish these boundaries and you're like, hey, when I'm in this space, this is what I need, and this is my boundary. Like, don't just leave me alone. Like, this is where I need to be. And same thing for you. Like understanding that the boundaries, guys, it's a very, very intense word. It's a very powerful word, but it is truly respecting yourself and respecting the other person.
And communicating your needs. Yeah. And your not restrictions, your limits.
Sure.
To keep yourself safe and in a good, productive, healthy space. Right. You know, like, even one of my boundaries. Okay. By the way, we never use the word boundary. No. So if you think that, like very rarely, we don't go around saying this is my boundary. Yeah. We just have learned this dance of, if it's a need, we orate it. Right. And the other person has learned through the time and exercise of this to respect that, because we get it. We get it. Well, one of the things I have of a boundary is I need sleep. Right. Sean loves to snuggle. He loves to wake me up when he can't sleep because he wants to hang out and have a sleepover. And he wants to wake me up in the morning, kiss my face. And I love all of that. So I know that if I get to a point where I can feel myself being in rundown, also because my Hashimoto's, I have to honor that, is I just communicate to you, hey, I really need sleep tonight.
Yeah.
So tomorrow
or you'll
morning,
say I need to sleep in the morning.
Yeah, I really need to sleep in the morning. And you're like, okay, I get it. It doesn't mean every morning you don't get to touch me. It means when I know it's important, I communicate that to you. And that's a boundary.
Right. And I think what's really powerful about this, and we learned this in dating, is, you know, I learned to respect her boundaries and she learned to communicate them. Because one of the things that drove us to breaking up, you dumping me, is that you didn't know how to communicate your boundaries and I didn't know how to respect them. Yep. And this is really important, because we started off with this conversation pre-marriage, pre-getting together and doing the deal. But I think that's what's helped us really evolve that skill set, if you will, of respecting each other's space and knowing that we have to have these places. We have to have these boundaries, if you will, that might not be comfortable. It might not be pleasant, but we have to respect it, because we respect, number one, ourselves. But number two, we respect the other person. And one of the things that I think is a very, very, very powerful caveat to this is understanding that if you want someone to respect your boundaries, you have to respect others. And this is the really interesting dance in marriage, is that, you know, the idea that we're married, we're together, we're doing this deal, you should look, I really need you right now, you need to pay attention to me, but I'm going to cross your boundary, but it's because we're married and I have a reason to do that. Yeah. It's wrong.
It's not.
It's
not okay.
It's not kosher. And I think a lot of couples, from what we hear and what we see, struggle with this, especially if you've been in a unhealthy pattern for a long time. If you haven't had any boundaries, if you haven't had any care for yourself or care for the other person, if you haven't honored that, it's really, really hard to make it happen. And I know this because I had no boundaries prior to dating you. I didn't have them. Yeah. I didn't really honor them and respect them, and I didn't really have any. So it was like I always got what I wanted, and it was, we played ball, and this is what Sax and I identified in part of our drive the other day, is like we basically played ball with yes men or yes women our entire life. We just got our way. We just pushed our way through everything and got whatever we wanted, and we had yes people around us all the time that never actually said, no, I'm not okay with that, or no, this isn't how it's going to go down, or no, I'm going to, and so there was never any sharpening of the sword because there was never a friction there to learn this new skill set. And so when you and I got together, it was kind of like, yeah, I can see you on this day or this day. And I'm like, no, let's do it tonight. Like, fuck you. I don't have anything going. I'm driving over to your house. And you're like, no, we're not hanging out tonight.
I have the
and I'm like, I'm coming over right now. And you're like, well, you're going to be sitting in my backyard by yourself because I'm not going to fucking be there. Right. Yeah. And it was an interesting.
It wasn't like, I want to be very, this is another thing we talked about yesterday is, it wasn't an aggressive thing.
No.
It wasn't like I literally said, I'm not going to fucking be there, because people might take that literally.
Once or twice.
No, people might take that literally, and it wasn't like that. It wasn't like a, no, fuck you. It was honestly just, I'm like, no, I am not available. Like, and just because you want that, like, I get that. But ladies, one of the things that came to me as well is, I understand, because I was single for a long time and I dated and I did the whole Bumble pool thing, and sometimes, like, FOMO, okay? I understand that sometimes it's like, oh, I don't want to miss out on this opportunity, or I don't want to miss out on the date with this guy. And to me, it was like, what I realized is if I truly was in a state of faith, I knew that God was going to align me with my person, no matter how much I had needed to take care of my family or needed to take care of my clients, because I was a very, very active realtor too, which is a very demanding job of time and other people. And so I went around knowing that it's like, I'm not going to lose if I stay the course of keeping my life in order and in honoring the commitments I already had in my life, outside of the shiny object that wants my attention or wants to take me on this date. And I get it. Like, so a lot of women they'll almost sacrifice in that scarcity mindset of like, well, I don't want him to pick someone else to take on that date. And it's like, go take someone else on that date. If I'm not available, that's okay. Like, 'cause I'm not worried about having to win over another person. I never believed that that's how it worked.
Right.
And so that's where I was okay to be like, hey, like, I can see you on Thursday. I would love to see you on Thursday. I would love to spend time with you. And also, I asked you this question yesterday. I said, do you think, because it just occurred to me, actually, I said, do you think on a subconscious level that showed, you already answered this, this is rhetorical at the moment, is I said, me being able to say no and honor my commitments, honor the relationships I was taking care of outside of dating you. I said, did that subconsciously, do you think, register as I was one that could not be swayed from my loyalty and my word and my obligations to show up for things that I committed to? And you immediately said, oh yeah. Mm-hmm. So if you think about that, that's a very, very beautiful attribute. Right. In a person that you would want to date, right, or you would want to marry. So be that same thing. Right. And that's, it was almost like I didn't do it intentionally either, but I thought about, like, if someone were to be doing that, I would think, wow, that's a person that I'm more likely to be trusting, right? Or trustable. Yeah.
Trustable.
Is trustable?
Trustworthy.
Trustworthy.
Yeah, it's close enough.
See?
Well, and as you're saying that, like, the same thing goes for me. Mm-hmm. And men, guys, like, if you're constantly, like, if your batteries are depleted and you have to take some time for yourself, if you've got to go do something, if you want to go hunt, if you want to go fish, you want to go to the gym, whatever it is, and you're in a space where you're knowing that this is something that you need, you're knowing that this is what you're feeling that you're needing to do, and you're getting pushback from your woman, oh my God, are you seriously? You're gonna, and you roll over and roll over and roll over and roll over. Don't be surprised why she doesn't trust you. Mm-hmm. Because if you can't keep that boundary, that's something you and I talked about clear as day at the beginning of our relationship. Like, yo, I'm gonna go do me. Mm-hmm. And I love you, and we do 98% of the things that we do together. Yep. And we're cool with that. But those other 2%, like when I'm going to go take the boys to the fights, or I'm going to go here, I'm going to go do this or that or the other, this is what I need to do right now with my boys or with whatever. And that boundary of you, instead of being like, well, I want to come, it's like, no, this is what we agreed to. Yeah. And you have to honor that, right? And it might be uncomfortable. It might be uncomfortable either way, right? But understanding like this is what's really, really, really powerful in a relationship with two human beings that are, number one, fiercely independent. Number two, like fire, just absolute fire, like you and I are. But being in a place where that respecting yourselves and respecting the other person's boundaries is really what builds trust. It builds trust. I mean, if
1000% is a beautiful way to establish trust.
I want you to say that or talk about that though, because there's a lot of. It's very easy to misconstrue what we're saying.
Sure.
In a number of different ways, but like I want you to talk about that from your side of knowing that I'm going to go out and fill my batteries and do my thing, and like when I tell you, hey, I'm throwing the penalty flag, like I need to go take my space or go do my thing, and I need you to respect this. Like I want you to talk about that, because I know that there are a lot of men who fear this, and they fear the retribution, they fear the fire, they fear holding that line in that if I do that, I'm going to piss her off. I just want to make her happy. I don't want to make her upset, whatever. It really, talk about that for a second, like specifically to the men, because this is a big, big, big issue in relationships, is not being able to honor yourself, not being able to honor boundaries, not being able to honor your word, but also living in a place of fear, from the women's perspective.
Right. So there's a lot of angles I could go with this. It's kind of like if you're trying to pour from an empty cup, there's nothing to give, right? And my life is not ruled by the permission of my husband. It's not, and never will be. I am a sovereign being. Like, I trust God, and I follow and listen to the needs that I want. Now, it doesn't mean that you always love that, right? But we've done this dance long enough, in the very uncomfortable parts. Like, this has not been like, oh, I just love that he wants to go off and blow off steam and, do his thing. Like, that can be uncomfortable. But what I know is that if I want to be able to have that same thing for myself, I must honor that in another. Now, I can trust that when I need to go take care of myself, that I know that I'm doing good for myself, right? And I also need to, no matter what my ego says, what my fear says, trust that in my partner. And in doing that, that will build trust over time, is seeing that I have a partner that communicates what they need, that they are not codependent to the point where they're not going to take care of themselves because of my pushback or my resistance or the busyness of life or whatever may grab their attention, that they prioritize themselves. And a lot of it truly comes down to how you present it, your tone, your language, your body language, all of that matters. Because if you go to your partner and you're like, fuck you, I'm going to the bar, I don't want to deal with this shit, you're fucked. Like, that's not going to be good. But if you go to your wife and you're like, listen, I have a lot on my plate right now. I want to get to a place where I feel more centered. I'm going to go and I don't know what you...
Hang out with the boys, go play golf, go play poker, whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever it is. So, like, Sean likes to go drive and smoke cigars. So I'll just use that, right? I get it. Like, okay, cool. I would much rather you be hanging out with me because that sounds cooler to me. But that's not what you need. You need to go and do that for you to fill your cup. And I don't get to... I can complain about it, but that's not what I want. Right. I want a relationship to where my husband handles his shit.
Right. And so the boundaries I'm going to do that. We agreed to that.
Yep.
And the boundary is, if I tell you I've got to go do this, then there is no kicking and screaming and bitching and moaning and yelling and
even if there is inside.
Right.
Because a lot of times these acts trigger people, especially if you have a more anxious attachment style. When a person wants to retreat,
right,
the little anxious part goes, oh shit.
Right.
Alarms go off, and that's where you get to grow.
Right.
That's where you get to sit in and be like, no matter what happens outside of myself, it is going to be what it is, and nothing I can do can control what's going to handle outside of myself. So I need to just take care of me when they're taking care of them, and together we will be strong individuals to build this relationship. And it sounds great on paper. It sounds great.
It's hard
but
as
it's
shit.
hard. It is
hard,
hard, especially when there's been conflict, and that's usually why there's a reason for a pause. And maybe it's just stress at work, or maybe it's just overwhelming, chaos in a business or with employees or whatever may be going on. But to be able to just trust that your partner's got it, and the person who needs that can learn a way to communicate that in a way that the person on the other side understands and doesn't necessarily just get it thrown in their face and shoved down their throat, because that's not really expressing boundaries. That's just kind of being
a dick,
an asshole.
Yeah. And this is radical. I have found that you and I, having our capacity to honor the other person's boundaries, it's, like you said, it's not always easy, but it's what has to happen. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think knowing that a lot of people struggle with that. A lot of people struggle, number one, clearly communicating that. Number two, honoring it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many different things that are roadblocks to what we really want, guys. Like, we all know this, right? Like, all of our fear, all of our past. I've seen this before. I've read this book before. I've seen these signs, yada, yada. I mean, your mind can go anywhere. But, you know, if you truly love somebody, you truly want to build something. I think that's what, you know, part of what we also talked about is, like, at the end of the day, like, we're not going anywhere. We both committed to this. And I think even though our minds scream, safety, run, hide, you're getting fucked over, bail, retreat.
Oh, I've seen this before.
Right. I've seen this before. Like, the truth of the matter is, if you can get to a place where you're both like, we're in, we're all in. This is why when people always ask me, like, you know, I'm getting married, you know, what's the number one thing that you would say? I'm like, number one, tell the truth. But number two, be all in. You've got to be all in. Like, if you're all in, I truly believe that this is something that you can build, you know, and with repetition, just like anything else. You know, 45 pounds doesn't get any lighter. 45 pounds is always 45 pounds, but the more you lift it, the stronger you get. The more you can appreciate boundaries, and the more you can have these framework of relationship and connection, the stronger you're actually going to get. Believe it or not, it sounds scary and it seems scary, but this is what builds the trust.
Right.
It's honoring that and knowing that it builds trust, to where prior to that it would just be it would be difficult, it would be terrifying, it would be humiliating, it would be embarrassing, whatever you want to say to it. Yeah,
and none of this is about being defiant. Like, none of it. Like, even when we were dating, and I really, really, really want people to, like, hang on to that idea of, like, stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Stay in your lane. Do you really, really good? And because like attracts like. Because if you're doing you really, really good, and you're honoring yourself, and you're respecting yourself, and you're communicating well, and you're living your best life, you will attract someone that's doing the exact same thing. Because here's the thing, is if I was having that conversation with, say, someone else, right, that I was dating, like hypothetically, and that person didn't respect themselves, and they allowed themselves to flip-flop all over the place and not have structure or boundaries, they're going to be triggered by me doing that, and they're going to be gone. That will filter them out very quickly, because that's going to be something that they don't respect in themselves, so they won't respect that in me, because they don't see that. Unless you can identify that as within something you do, they're not your people anyway. So honor the fact that that's a filtration system to only truly align with people that are vibrating on the same wavelength as you. Because, you know, it's like when you came in after the growing pain of it, you realized, wow, like, she has shit. Oh, I have shit. Oh,
this is our 2.0.
Yeah, literally. And it was like, you were like, oh, well, I have a lot going on, and she has a lot going on. Like, wow, like, that's actually something to be, you know, and so yeah, it's not about being defiant. I actually did it more so as 2.0, but I did it very lovingly. I just explained, like, I have these things going on, and it was beautiful. And I was just last week, I was joking with my mom. We were talking about something, and I said, you know, I swear Sean only married me because I'm the only chick that's ever broke up with him and told him no. she slapped. She's like, "You're probably right," but I mean, it's a haha joke. But on some level,
you look good naked too, so that works.
But on some level, that was attractive to you. So, go ahead.
Go ahead and finish that.
No, it's don't look at this as a negative, or you're missing out, or you're being rude, or you're not accommodating, because women more so, I feel like, they will give everything. They will put themselves absolutely last. And that's not attractive, because you're modeling the fact that you're a doormat, or you're completely bendable in a way that, like, you know, a strong man needs a strong woman, and a strong woman doesn't need to be defiant, but strong woman necessarily can't just be pushed to and fro. Like it's like you stand on your own 2 feet, and it's a beautiful alignment. And it almost, I think too, it like showed you that. I feel like I'm like building myself up here, but it's what happened. It was the story.
Well,
and so
it was sexy, and I want to touch on this because like it was right, but I understand, fellas. Like I was playing small 1.0. I was the little boy. I was still in that mindset. I was still in that space. I was still in, I'm going to get what I want. Fuck everybody. You're going to just serve me. And I was in that mindset, right? And when I'm experiencing these boundaries and these things, it was frustrating. I'm like, who the fuck is this? Like, what are you talking about? I'm Sean
all these
Whalen.
other girls,
you know,
will go on.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, yo, what you think you're better than me? What is it? And I say that with a lot of fucking humility because it takes a strong man to truly like understand his own ego, to know what the difference is between being that little boy and being offended by something and actually having respect for a woman. And fellas, a lot of you have built really shitty relationships and really bad foundations because you have acted like a little boy. And the truth of the matter is, it is going to take a radical amount of work for you to swallow your pride and truly check that ego, to have the level of compassion and respect for your woman, to have her own set of boundaries, to have her own identity, have her own reality, right? And this isn't a business thing and you got to be making more than me and I got to be making more than you. I'm talking about the fact that, like, if you're acting like a little boy and mommy doesn't give you the cookie, what happens? You throw a fucking temper tantrum. You act like a little boy and you want the cookie from mommy and mommy doesn't give you the fucking cookie, you throw a goddamn temper tantrum. That's what men do. That's what we do. Yeah, we're 45 fucking years old throwing a temper tantrum because we're not getting insert the fucking thing, or we don't have insert the fucking thing, right? And this is that real powerful dynamic that I had to go through in 1.0 and 2.0 is understanding I actually do want a woman that respects herself. I want a woman that respects her fucking time. Because if she's going to respect her time without me, she's also going to respect her time with me. And that was a powerful thing for me. It took me really checking my ego and understanding that I wanted that. I just didn't know how to evolve into that. And I had to rise myself. I had to honor my own boundaries. I had to keep my word in order to create that same reality with you, where I got your word and I got the boundaries. And it was hard at first because I did want to kick and scream. I did want to throw the temper tantrum. I didn't get the cookie. I wanted to fucking throw the temper tantrum, right?
Yeah.
But there's a level to this game, and I promise you, fellas, like it took us 6 months of us not being together and whatever to understand it. And then it's taken us 3 years, 2.5 years to really become even better practitioners. I'm not even going to say great at it. We're not great at it yet, but we've become significantly better and more powerful over the last just couple of years. But it has taken a shit ton of work and a shit ton of humility on both of our parts. And like just so much like checking of the ego for us to get where we are.
Yeah. Our 1.0 was almost 4 years ago. And it's like, you look at where we both were, because I had my own things like this. We're just focused on this topic right now, but we
had a lot of topics from that conversation yesterday.
Yeah. So you look at, and you were an outstanding entrepreneur, like you're very successful, but it's like the relationships part of you didn't really come to maturity yet, right? When 1.0 came around. So it's not like there was, you were still a great man doing great things, but you didn't have anything to sharpen that sword against. Right. And then you look at if you dedicate the time and the energy and the commitment to it, 4 years is not that long. No. You look at 4 years and you look at how much we've both grown in the areas that, because you've sharpened my sword in a lot of ways. You look at you then, 4 years now, and it's like you are dramatically different. Right. You're dramatically different by the month, and that's beautiful. And it's,
you're welcome, babe.
Well, and you
landed a good one.
I did, and I saw. So also, I want to add, I saw that then.
Right.
I didn't. Sean wasn't some delinquent like teeny bopper that was like at the bar all the time and being like, I saw you, like I saw your true self. Now, there was a whole lot of stuff in front of it, which was the ego, but I saw you, and I knew even when I broke up with you, I still knew that you were great.
Yeah. And I saw through your bullshit.
Yeah.
We talked about this yesterday. I saw through Sax's
and that's
bullshit.
Why we had a 2.0. It's because there was at least enough spark to believe in and to know that could come, that could grow. And it's not like we got married with this like, or started dating with like, oh, I believe in this potential. Right. None of that shit. Right. It's that I knew that this man wanted that for himself.
Yeah.
I want to be very like, I knew you wanted that.
I did. And this is, I think, a part of, if you're listening to this and you're like, how the fuck am I going to do this, whatever, this is actually the part of hope. And I don't like using the word hope, but like that faith. You should,
I think faith
faith that you can be looking at going, okay, you know, not just if they can do that, but the truth of the matter is if you're in a relationship right now and you at least have like a few foundational principles of connection, meaning you love each other, you want to be together, like you truly do. You're not checked out, you're not fucking moving on, you're not banging the freaking mailman and the neighbor, but like you're in that place. It's actually a really, really exciting and powerful invitation to step into this, because you're like, okay, if we know that we're not going anywhere, like what would it look like if we leveled this game up to this new reality of having boundaries, of respecting ourselves and our partner in that way? The amount of trust that can be built. Yeah. I mean, you and I talked about this as well. Like neither of us has been in a relationship where we've ever had this level of connection, never. Vulnerability, and also trust. You know what I mean? And we've tried to shake the shit out of each other's tree of trust. Yeah. And I truly believe it's so many of these little things that amount to the big things. But it's, you know, understanding that I'm going to do me, you're going to do you, and you have to have supreme confidence in that. You have to have supreme faith in that. And that's where it takes a really, really, really mighty man and a mighty woman to be able to have the boundaries and the level of connection and the level of desire and the level of trust to build an extraordinary relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? We talked about a lot of other things. I wanted to bring up one more thing, but I think if I do, it's going to be an entirely new episode. An entirely different episode.
Just give them a teaser then, and we'll just do.
You remember what we were talking about in like the learning? We've been. Fuck it. We'll just talk about it. We've been really trying to, and this kind of goes along with boundaries, I guess, but understanding what the other person needs in the moments that we don't want to give it to them. Let me give you an example. Yeah. We have a guy that we work with, call him a coach, and we talked about this on a prior episode. He asked a question. He's like, imagine like the darkest moment. Imagine like a moment when you're in real freaking heat, the worst situation, when you're angry, whatever. You've
completely regressed back to your 5-year-old self. Right. You're a hot mess.
You're kicking and screaming. You know, what's the one thing that you would want from your partner? What's the one thing? Like, what's the one thing that comes to your mind? And you know, what we're finding, and this is this is very, very, very indicative of the boundaries of the whole thing, is what Sax and I have found is that what she wants from me in that moment when she's the quote hot mess is literally the exact last thing that I want to do. And what I want and require or request in that moment is literally the exact last thing that you want to do. And it's this really, really, really interesting dance because, and we can go down the rabbit hole at length.
Yeah, and I want to say too is this is why I think the term goes around as opposites attract, right? Which I don't believe that, but it's I heard someone say this recently, and it's God has a funny way of putting people together that are the opposite of what they need. So a person that seeks safety will be attract a partner that needs freedom.
Right.
And it's this kind of like messed up game of like, ha ha ha, joke's
Yeah.
on you. However, it's truly a gift from God, because how else are you going to be able to be put in a position to grow greater spiritually and grow greater emotionally than if you are put in connection with someone with the opposite of what you want in your comfort? And I'm not saying you shouldn't. This is not a toxic level. This is like they stretch you to be outside of the box of what you just want, right? And therefore you grow, right? Because there's resistance and there's this like uncomfortable space, and that's the beauty of it. It's like, oh, okay, I get to go to places that I normally would never show up because the person that I love is happy or thrives in that space.
Right.
And this is a positive side, not a negative.
And it's not so much of my life was fuck it, I'm going to do it my way. I don't care what anybody says, yada, 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 right? And we've all read the 5 agreements. We were, taking the love languages test and the whole thing. And we've also had the flip side conversation of like, I'm not going to do anything that I don't want in life. And, I'm going to live in my own peace and my own reality and the whole thing. And what's really fascinating is this is a lot of the same along the same lines as the boundaries. Is there's a lot of things that I don't want to do, but in order to love and connect and respect you, there's these things that I need to do, right? And there's a mind fuck with that where it's like, fuck you, I'm not going to do that. That makes you uncomfortable. Let's do something else, right? And we were talking about this in great depth yesterday about how literally the thing that Saxony needs from me in this moment when she's lost it all, sad, the whole thing is the thing that makes me the most uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's the thing that I kick and scream against. It's the thing that I don't want to do, right? It's and just to give you guys an example,
sure, is
when typically the only time Saxony cries, I mean, we cried cat videos and funny shit. Well, maybe not cat videos.
Cry
dog,
when I love
babies.
So much.
Yeah. It's either that or we're at fucking war.
Yeah, I don't usually cry in between.
And it's at like war. Now, when Sax and I go into war, neither of us is very nice. Plain and simple.
There's not. I'm
an asshole. Sax is just a raging fucking lunatic. Right? Now, I'm sharing this with you simply because this is so hard for both of us, but yet we're learning that this is that next level of our connection, of our depth, of our trust, of our vulnerability. Like what Saxony wants is me to just basically hold her and tell her it's going to be okay, right? And tell you that I love you, tell you that you're safe, and literally like the last thing I want to do after my brat wife has been a total bitch to me or said really rude, mean things is give her a fucking hug. I want to get in my car and go turn on the music and smoke a cigar or go to the gym or go down into my office or anything other than that. I don't want to do that. Now, the simple, again, on paper, it's like, well, you love your wife. Just give her a fucking hug. This isn't like a hug where you smack you on the ass, right, see you later. It's like holding her, right? Now, the ego in me wants to come unglued and make apologies and create recompense for all the dumb shit that you just said to me, right? But understanding that this is what she needs in this space, this is what I must do to bridge this gap. Now, on the flip side, the last thing that Sax wants to do with me, do you want to share your part of the story?
Sure.
Go ahead.
So Sean wants me to just straight up go for his junk in a good way.
Yeah.
Like just
come fuck me.
Just
period.
Fuck him, just whatever.
Period.
All of the above. And when my husband's been an absolute jerk and said stuff that's just projected and just been a brat, the last thing I want to do is touch him, let alone fondle his stuff. Like I have no interest.
You can say words in here,
I know.
babe.
I have literally no interest. If anything, I'm like, my pants are not coming off for $1 million. I'm so mad at you. But like I have to remember, and this is part of like stepping out of the ego or that moment of like instant reaction of like, okay, what do I actually really want? Like this is my person, and I get to
Right.
I get to do something different.
Right.
And it gets to be uncomfortable until I do it enough times, and then it's not as uncomfortable because I've realized I'm not going to die if I go and pleasure my husband when he's been a jerk.
Yeah, now there's a lot of people that are reading this go, oh my God, that's so unhealthy and that's so this. No, it's not actually. It's not.
All of you guys.
You can take your scarcity bullshit someplace else.
This is another thing we talked about, is I would love to think in a perfect world that no one gets triggered and overreacts.
Sure.
Awesome. Maybe some monks. It is definitely a goal. Like, I think it's a goal that everyone should have, to have a very like stable, non-reactive, but it happens.
Sure.
I don't
everybody.
I don't get enough sleep and I'm cranky.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't mean it's all the time, and it's not a toxic thing, but
Right.
we are human beings, and human beings have physiological reactions, and they do sometimes hijack you, and you get to rise to your highest self in those moments, or learn to pause in between the stimuli and the response. But guess what? There will be a day that 99.999% of people on this planet will have a poor reaction, and this is what we're talking about, is in these places.
Right. Now, everybody who says that they don't, just because you have zero human interaction and you live with a cat, you know what I mean? You're not part of this conversation. But those of us that actually do realize that we do go down the rabbit hole, that we do say dumb shit, that we do have our quote-unquote inner child that likes to fucking throw temper tantrums, men and women, all the time. It's been a really fascinating experience for us, and this was a really cool part of our conversation last night, to realize, like, literally, like, in creating these boundaries, the boundaries trigger the shit out of us. The boundaries scare us in a lot of ways. Like, me creating boundaries trigger things and thoughts and feelings with you, and you doing the same thing creates the same thing with me, right? And knowing that, like, in order for us to connect on a deeper level, I have to be able to take that little girl who's throwing the temper tantrum and hold her. Now,
and it's also learning to see past the moment on a logical level. It's not logical.
It's not. And so everybody who wants to throw a book at us, everybody who wants to talk about we should read Joe Dispenza, we should do this, and we should do all these other things right now, stop and understand something. Like, you're talking about taking your logic and hearing these words that we're sharing right now. You're talking about hearing what we're talking about and saying, oh, well, and labeling all this other stuff. You're talking about taking the inner, the child who's throwing the temper tantrum, and what does that child want? The love, the connection, the safety, the vulnerability, the openness.
This is where healing in relationships happens. Healing in relationships. Also, something we talked about is, when I was single, I didn't get triggered very often.
Right.
Oh, I was like, I did these meditations in my garden.
You were never
and my
connected
life was,
to anything.
But
or
nothing
anyone.
was there to have me look at the things I didn't want to look at.
Correct.
Nothing ruffled my feathers, because it was me, myself, and I. And I'm not going to trigger myself. Like, how am I going to trigger myself? It's not going to happen. However, an intimate relationship will bring up all of your unhealed issues. And guess what? When you're in a good relationship, like, this is why we're talking about it, is you get to look at them and heal and learn how to become better in the partnership you're in. Or some people will just choose to sedate it.
Right.
And that's why they don't
lie about it.
Right. That's why they don't have, we don't have issues.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, your husband's addicted to porn. You're on painkillers, and the kids are just running around the house.
But
crazy.
I want to add to this, though. It's not always about the trauma. It's not always about, like, some, fucked up thing from my past. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. This is something that you and I are learning. Like, we all get hurt. We all get frustrated. We all get sad, right? And anybody who says that they don't, they're lying. And anybody who says, like, well, here's a book you read, you never fucking get sad again. You're fucking full of shit, right? Right? You're not human. You're a fucking alien. But understanding, like, when you get into this space, the thing that my wife needs is the thing that I want to do the least. And the thing that I need is the thing that you want to do the least. Now, it's a really interesting, you kind of go to the fork in the road, right? Do I turn right, and to the right is my partner, and connection and depth and a deeper level of trust, a deeper level of vulnerability, because it's going to require me to do some shit that makes me uncomfortable. And what do we like to do as human beings? Run from things that make us uncomfortable. Sure. To the left is, I'm just going to stay in status quo. I'm going to be a victim or a villain. I'm going to blame it on her, or I'm going to say that this makes me uncomfortable, la, 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 la. I'm not going to do any of these things. And I truly believe like one of the next levels for us is in this discovery, number one, but number two, in this application, and really understanding that there is no negotiation with this. You know, you've tried to negotiate with me a little bit, and I've tried to negotiate with you, but we've understood like this is what I need in this moment. And I think it was a really great lesson for both of us in this experience with this guy, because there's no lying about it. You know what I mean? And when you can get to a place with your partner and you can say, when I go here, here's what I need. And you do it from a place of authenticity, truth. Again, I hate that fucking word, but whatever. When you can do it from a place of radical vulnerability and say, hey, you know what? And men, I hope you're listening to me, because I promise you, I swear on my friggin' life, like, you start understanding some of these skill sets and some of these dynamics of life. I promise you, you will connect at such a depth with your partner that you will then in turn get what you want.
Yep.
And I don't do what I do simply because I'm trying to freaking get my dick sucked. I'm not doing what I'm doing because I'm trying to get laid. I'm doing it because I want more. I want more. And so in order for me to be more, to connect more, to go deeper, it just builds that much more trust, and that much more trust connects to that much more intimacy. That much more intimacy connects to that much more pleasure. Right. And it's like got this really, really cool ripple effect. But it starts with perhaps the thing that we want to do the least, perhaps the thing that is the most uncomfortable for us. Perhaps it starts with that boundary and setting a boundary and understanding like this is something that I need, and now my partner gets to do their own work and figure this out. To take it all the way down to like, look, when I'm in my worst, like when I unleash the fucking fury, when I let that fucking raging lunatic out, this is what I need. And you're over here going, time out. Nope, that's not going to happen. What is it? What would it look like? This is a rhetorical question. I'll finish with this. Like, what would it look like if you became the type of person who could put your own ego in such a like radically defiant place that you can do something that you're terribly scared of or terribly intimidated by, but yet connects you with your partner in a way that really nothing else could. Yep. There's no date, there's no beach, there's no jewelry, there's no bag that I could buy that would build that level of connection and trust than me being able to be in your worst moment, present, giving you exactly what you need.
Yeah, 1,000%. I can't think of anybody that wouldn't value that above anything else. And I think especially people that have been through a lot of life is, you know, that most people won't stay in those spaces because it brings up things in themselves and they'll retreat. And that's one of the things that I appreciate about our relationship is we don't expect perfection from the other, but we do expect growth and we do expect accountability. But we also expect in ourselves to be a partner that can learn to be there in hard moments. And I think that's the beautiful part about being in a relationship. It's like you get to love your partner when your partner needs love the most. And in turn, they will love you the most, or they will love you when you need it the most. And that's a beautiful thing and it's like, not
loving them how you want to love them. It's loving them how they need to be loved. And that's a very, very, very difficult thing, especially for two prideful freaking sons of bitches like us.
Sure.
That have giant egos who want to kick and scream against all of that to really understand, like, we want the depth more than we want the ego right now. And when you can get to that place, man, and you start playing like chess with those moves and you understand, I really want to get to this side of the board, but this is what I have to do that. Me personally, dude, I mean, yeah. It's pretty fucking rad.
Yep. honestly, like learning to take the logic out of conflict or uncomfortable moments has been probably the greatest tool I've utilized in connecting with us when things are hard. Because logic will never side with emotion. Because feelings aren't facts. We know this. And emotions they're not always rational. And sometimes the other person doesn't even know why they're feeling the way they're feeling. And that's why it's like trying to bring logic into it or judge the person for what's like, I've said this before, like I'm learning to not judge you when you're at your worst as if that's your best, or even if that's like you're normal. It's not fair, because like I'm not my normal self when I'm hurt. And I don't process the same. And so to learning to have that empathy, to see your partner with compassion, like, you know, this is just some sticky shit for them. And I can judge them and make them feel bad about it. Or I can just learn to be here in this moment. And, you know, like, why the fuck not? Because that's one of the gifts, and that's one of the, not gifts. It's one of the things that I cherish the most in my responsibility as your wife, is that I chose to do this life with you and love you for all that you are. And I've said it before, like, if I don't love you at your worst, when you're struggling and you're growing and you're trying new things and you're going to uncharted territories, you're opening new doors, like, then I don't deserve you at your best, because I love you. And this is easy to say now because I'm not upset, because in the moment sometimes I'm like, I don't like him. I don't like him one bit, but I sure love him. And this is where I have to take my logic back out and be like, you know what? Like, I too have shit. I too have problems. I too have things that upset me, and I don't act my best self, and I don't want to be judged like that. And so I know that if I'm growing, and this is not just toxic bullshit, because that's right. Not what we're referring to, is then cool. Like, I get to also just be in this and have compassion. So here we go, because we're on a journey. I think this was great. I think we are done.
Are we done? You done?
We need to go to dinner now.
Oh,
we have dinner plans.
Guys, we have dinner plans. It's my son's birthday.
Yay!
Coming up. It's his birthday. So, yeah. If you have any questions, hit us in the comments. And if you know anybody that needs to hear this, share it with them. Everybody needs to hear this, right? Not everybody, but if you know somebody that does, we'd love for you to share it. So there's a couple more really big things we talked about in the car.
Yeah.
Which I would really like to talk about.
Let's do it
on the podcast.
We should have a 61st.
We will.
Episode. You know, just a thought.
All right. Cheers to 60.
Yay.
We love you guys. Cheers. Bye.
Love you. Bye.